So President Biden has signed a bill. And what President Biden is saying is that the American people just won. Now, I want to break this down. Because what if I told you in this bill it is going to lower the cost for elderly here in the United States? Also, in this same bill, it's going to provide credits for clean energy. And it's going to make sure that there's a 15% minimum corporate tax. Now, does this sound like something you could potentially get behind? Well, we need to talk about this because, as President Biden says, and I quote, the American people won and the special interests lost. Now, we need to address what is in this bill and why did President Biden sign it? What was his thinking behind it? But first, all I ask is if you can do me a favor, it takes just 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates, and let's get right down to it. So we need to address the bill that President Biden signed. And I first just want to say that President Biden signed this bill. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act. He signed it back in August of 2022. Now, why am I addressing a bill that is almost a year later? Well, simple. Because now lawmakers and the special interests are coming back to pretty much pull back some of those provisions. They don't like them. They do not like the things that were passed. Some say because they will never happen. They will never happen. Listen to this, okay? All things that were passed in the Inflation Reduction Act are now being put into question. Any provision that President Biden passed over the past couple of years are now being put into question. Special interests, again, that President Biden exclaimed lost, well, they are working to get these laws reversed. They don't like them. Not only do they not like them, this is something that they are now seeing is going to hurt their companies, their industries, and potentially the entire economy. For example, let me just break down some of this stuff for you. One of the big wins, according to Democrats, was that the IRS was going to get $80 billion. This was going to help them hire 87,000 new IRS agents. They were going to go after the wealthy, what they call tax cheats. But if you recall, in a recent bill that President Biden also signed, called the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which addressed the debt ceiling and suspended it until January 1st, 2025, the IRS isn't going to get $20 billion of that $80 billion that they secured. Why? Because Democrats clawed $10 billion back for each of the next couple of years. That's the reason why. But again, it doesn't stop there. And this is the reason why I bring this up, is because we are now starting to see not just the special interests, but Republicans are now targeting some of this spending and saying that this was too much, we never needed it, and we need to go back to the drawing board. Listen to this. Just over the past 3 months, actually over the past 1 month, just 1 month, 3 pharmaceutical companies have sued the Biden administration. It's not a good look. They've sued the Biden administration for their role in attempting to make pharmacy bills cheaper and prescription drugs less expensive. Now, the provision within the Inflation Reduction Act, and again, this states that Medicare can negotiate prescription drug prices. Well, now this is up in the air. The special interests are now coming back. The pharmaceutical companies are now saying that they are losing money. They are losing money because of this potential change. Again, potential change. The change hasn't happened today. Seniors are not saving money today. No. This is stuff that's going to happen in like 2 or 3 years. Just listen to this. And this is how things are panning out right now. Because the Biden administration, according to reports, they have until September of 2023, so this year. Their goal is to identify 10 drugs that they're going to target to attempt to make cheaper. Now, they have until September to do this. Then, in the first part of 2024, they're going to continue through this formal process and really fine tune and figure out how can they save the American people or the elderly more money. Well, this pricing change isn't going to happen and will not be implemented until 2026. Again, we're about 2 to 3 years away. But now the question is, how are lawmakers going to change this? How are we going to see any type of savings for the elderly, right? Everything is now in question because lawmakers are starting to go after these policies. So even though President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act, the problem now is the bill that he signed was not the bill that the American people wanted. It was the bill that Democrats thought they needed. And keep in mind, back when this bill was signed, the Inflation Reduction Act, what was happening right after that? Because this was signed back in August of 2022. Do you remember what was happening in November of 2022? Well, let me just give you a quick little hint. We had a midterm election. Yeah, we had an election in November of 2022. This is where Democrats were able to hold on to a bunch of seats in the Senate and actually gain one seat in the Senate simply because they were able to give the American people what they wanted or what they thought they wanted. Well, they lost a bunch of seats in the House and Republicans took it over. Now, here is why some people are extremely worried about what could come. They say the Biden administration pushed through certain legislation when they had full control over the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And now, what we're hearing is they're likely to have to simply walk back some of these provisions in order to get a deal done for the government funding bill for fiscal year 2024. Again, we've heard this from multiple Republicans that the provisions that were passed, all the money that was spent, that's great. It helped Democrats temporarily. However, they are not going to go through with that. There's no way they are going to fund some of these things. And so now they're pulling the money back. And I've said this time and time again. The expectation as of right now is that Social Security, SNAP, Medicare, and other high priorities for lawmakers, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, but for all lawmakers, okay, Social Security, SNAP, Medicare, other things as well, okay, those cannot be negotiated until the government funding bill for fiscal year 2024 is finalized. And we cannot get that finalized until we come to an agreement and come to terms with how much money we have already spent. But at the same time, now what Republicans are asking is, no, you need to stop some of those things. We cannot spend money on that because we have other priorities. That's what we're hearing. This is part of the reason why $20 billion is going to be clawed back from the IRS or will just not be given. Because again, the IRS didn't get $80 billion just on day one. They're getting that money, that $80 billion addition to what they were already getting. That's what was coming, and it's coming over 10 years of time. But now they're losing $20 billion, $10 billion over the next couple of years. So again, what we're hearing and what we're seeing is that, yes, this is going to happen. So even though President Biden signed the bill back in August of 2022 and exclaimed that the American people won and the special interests lost, at this time, it looks like the American people didn't win. It was a temporary win, but we would never see those results. We'd never see the benefits that were promised. So that's where we're at this time. But again, just wanted to fill you in on what's going on because as of right now, all lawmakers are looking at these bills that were previously passed and saying that, okay, we don't need that. We don't need that. We can do without that. And maybe that's going to give the American people exactly what they want. So we'll see what happens moving forward. All I can promise is I will be here every step of the way. I will fill you in on all the latest news and updates. All you got to do is two things. First off, hit the like button on this video. Just shows me that you appreciate the hours and hours of time I put into just doing the research for these, but also click that subscribe button so you never miss an update. That's what we know as of today. Again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I will see you guys on the next one.